Ladies and gentlemen, the rise of the Cali Cartel cannot be understood without examining the masterminds behind its creation. At the center of this powerful organization were two brothers, Gilberto Rodriguez Orihuela and Miguel Rodriguez Orihuela. Born in the city of Mariquita, Colombia, the Rodriguez brothers were not your typical street-level criminals. From the beginning, they had a vision, a blueprint to build an organization that would rival even the most established criminal enterprises in the world. Alongside the Rodriguez brothers were two other major figures, José Santa Cruz Londano, known for his ruthless efficiency and strong connections in Colombia's underworld, and Helmer Herrera, better known as Pacho Herrera, who was not only a major trafficker, but also the cartel's primary link to the international market, especially the US and Mexico. Pacho Herrera also handled relations with Mexican cartels and had a fearsome reputation for both diplomacy and deadly enforcement. What made this leadership group so unique was the way they divided responsibilities like a corporate boardroom. Gilberto was the strategist and financial architect. Miguel managed logistics, making sure tons of cocaine flowed smoothly from Colombia to North America and Europe. Santa Cruz acted as the enforcer and manager of operations on the ground, while Pacho was the cartel's ambassador to the world, overseeing alliances, managing rivalries, and ensuring international distribution. Each leader brought a different skill set to the table, and together, they formed a cartel that was less like a street gang and more like a global corporation. They avoided the spotlight, shunned the flamboyant violence of Pablo Escobar, and instead invested in intelligence, bribes, and building a criminal empire that was almost invisible to the public eye. Their combined leadership and tactical division of power allowed the Cali Cartel to grow into one of the most powerful and sophisticated drug trafficking organizations in history. One of the most defining features of the Cali Cartel was its strategic and low-profile approach to criminal enterprise. In stark contrast to Pablo Escobar's Medellín cartel, which was notorious for public bombings, assassinations, and open war against the Colombian government, the Cali Cartel chose a different path, one that prioritized subtlety, intelligence, and influence over brute force. The leaders of the Cali Cartel understood early on that open confrontation with the state would only bring chaos and collapse. Instead, they built their empire through calculated moves, favoring covert operations, economic infiltration, and silent manipulation of institutions. Rather than rely on fear alone, they embedded themselves within the legitimate sectors of society, winning protection not through terror, but through bribes, favors, and loyalty bought in boardrooms and political offices. At the core of their strategy was an extensive intelligence-gathering network. The cartel invested heavily in surveillance equipment, wiretapping, and informant recruitment. They wiretapped government agencies, police stations, and even their own members to monitor loyalty and identify threats in advance. This internal intelligence arm was so advanced that it rivaled the capabilities of national security services. The Cali Cartel often knew about police raids, DEA operations, and political developments before they became public knowledge. Bribery was another powerful tool in their arsenal. Judges, military officers, customs officials, and even journalists were placed on the cartel's payroll. This allowed the organization to move massive shipments of cocaine across borders with minimal resistance and to avoid prosecution or exposure. The cartel's financial reach ensured that entire chains of command within law enforcement were paralyzed, rendered ineffective not by fear, but by greed. They also understood the value of public relations and image control. Unlike Escobar, who reveled in public attention, the leaders of the Cali Cartel avoided the limelight. They rarely gave interviews, avoided ostentatious displays of wealth, and lived in relatively discreet luxury. This strategic invisibility helped them stay under the radar for years while expanding their influence and profits. It also made it harder for law enforcement to gather direct evidence against them or even understand the full extent of their operations. Furthermore, the cartel divided its operations into compartments, ensuring that if one arm was compromised, the rest could continue functioning. Trafficking routes, money laundering, local enforcement, and international partnerships were all operated independently, but coordinated from the top. This compartmentalization made the organization more resilient and harder to dismantle. Through a unique blend of patience, diplomacy, intelligence, and corruption, the Cali Cartel created a system that was far more durable than that of their violent counterparts. They were businessmen in the drug trade, strategists who understood that wars attract enemies, but quiet power can last for decades unnoticed. By the early 1990s, the Cali Cartel had become the undisputed titan of the global cocaine market. While the Medellín cartel once held the spotlight, its violent downfall left a power vacuum, one the Cali Cartel filled with astonishing speed and precision. At its peak, the Cali Cartel was believed to be responsible for supplying nearly 80% of the cocaine that entered the United States and the vast majority of what flowed into Europe. This immense control over distribution made them not just a Colombian powerhouse, but a global force. Their rise to dominance was not accidental. It was the result of meticulous planning and a deep understanding of international logistics. Unlike Escobar's brute force approach of using small planes and jungle airstrips, the Cali Cartel developed a multi-layered transportation network. They used container ships, commercial airliners, and even submarines to smuggle massive quantities of cocaine out of Colombia. Hidden compartments, forged shipping documents, and bribed customs officials made detection incredibly difficult. But controlling the supply chain was only half the battle. The Cali Cartel also maintained a complex web of distribution cells across the Americas and Europe. In the United States, they worked with street gangs and local dealers, ensuring their product moved swiftly and safely through major urban centers like New York, Miami, and Los Angeles. In Europe, their connections stretched through Spain, the Netherlands, and beyond, transforming the continent into a growing market for Colombian cocaine. What made their grip so ironclad was their ability to control both ends of the pipeline, from the coca fields in the Andes to the street corners of international cities. They financed farmers, oversaw processing labs, coordinated maritime and air trafficking, and managed wholesalers abroad. This vertical integration gave them unprecedented control over pricing, purity, and supply. Moreover, the cartel's business acumen played a huge role in their market dominance. They implemented advanced financial strategies to reinvest profits, manage risk, and launder billions of dollars through legitimate businesses and offshore accounts. They even studied markets to better understand demand, pricing fluctuations, and distribution trends, operating more like a multinational corporation than a drug cartel. This empire was built not only on drugs, but on data, discipline, and control. Every shipment was tracked, every dollar accounted for, and every move calculated to maximize profits and minimize exposure. Their global reach meant they weren't just dominating the cocaine trade, they were shaping it, redefining how narcotics were trafficked, sold, and consumed around the world. One of the most remarkable and disturbing aspects of the Cali Cartel's operation was its use of advanced surveillance technology, which rivaled that of government intelligence agencies. Unlike traditional criminal organizations that relied on intimidation and brute force, the Cali Cartel prioritized information gathering as a central pillar of its strategy. This was not just about staying one step ahead. It was about staying 10 steps ahead. The cartel developed an extensive wiretapping and surveillance network throughout the city of Cali and beyond. They had a specialized division dedicated solely to monitoring phone lines, government communications, police radio traffic, and even the private conversations of political figures and journalists. This internal intelligence unit employed former military officers, electronics experts, and technicians trained in espionage tactics. At one point, it was reported that the Cali Cartel had tapped over 5,000 phone lines in the city of Cali alone. This included phones belonging to judges, prosecutors, DEA agents, journalists, and even members of the Colombian presidential office. They used this intelligence to monitor investigations, anticipate law enforcement actions, identify potential leaks, and manipulate events from behind the scenes. In many cases, they were aware of planned raids or arrests before the authorities involved had even fully coordinated them. But their surveillance extended far beyond law enforcement. The cartel also spied on their own people. Associates, lieutenants, and even lower-level workers were monitored to detect disloyalty, theft, or betrayal. This created a climate of paranoia and control, where every move was potentially being recorded, every conversation monitored. Loyalty was constantly tested, and suspicion alone could lead to swift and deadly consequences. What made this system so dangerous was that it wasn't sloppy or makeshift. It was professional, structured, and heavily funded. The cartel's communication interception center was housed in a building resembling a private intelligence agency, filled with reels of audio tapes, wiretapping devices, and trained personnel who worked around the clock. This surveillance infrastructure didn't just help the Cali Cartel avoid detection. It gave them a strategic advantage in nearly every area of their operations. They could neutralize threats before they emerged, manipulate public officials with compromising information, and negotiate with foreign traffickers or rival organizations from a position of absolute strength. Moreover, their mastery of information control helped maintain their invisible empire. While other cartels relied on visible displays of power, the Cali Cartel's power was subtle and omnipresent. Their leaders knew more than their enemies thought possible, and that knowledge gave them a silent but overwhelming dominance over Colombia's drug landscape. Perhaps one of the most chilling and effective tactics employed by the Cali Cartel was their systematic infiltration of Colombia's most powerful institutions. Unlike the overt attacks launched by the Medellín cartel, bombings, assassinations, and direct threats to the government, the Cali Cartel took a much more insidious route. They simply bought influence. With deep pockets and a business-first mindset, they penetrated every level of the Colombian government, law enforcement, judiciary, and even international financial systems, effectively wrapping the country's infrastructure around their empire. This infiltration wasn't random, it was strategic. The cartel specifically targeted key individuals who could offer protection, legal immunity, or advance notice of investigations. Police commanders, military officers, customs agents, prosecutors, judges, and high-ranking politicians were all approached, evaluated, and offered lucrative bribes in exchange for their cooperation or their silence. In many cases, officials didn't even need to be coerced. The money was too good to resist. The extent of this influence was staggering. It's believed that entire police departments in Cali and nearby cities were on the cartel's payroll. Arrests would be delayed, raids would be canceled, and evidence would mysteriously disappear. High-profile court cases involving cartel members were often dismissed due to lack of evidence or procedural technicalities, all thanks to judges who had been quietly bought off months in advance. Beyond law enforcement and the judiciary, the Cali Cartel also had substantial reach into Colombian politics. Numerous politicians, including members of Congress and local mayors, were known to have received campaign contributions or under-the-table deals from cartel operatives. In return, these politicians helped shape drug policies, slow down extradition efforts, or push for lenient legislation. The cartel understood that political influence wasn't just a shield, it was a sword, allowing them to strike at enemies legally and restructure the game in their favor. Even Colombia's national intelligence services weren't immune. Some agents fed classified information directly to the cartel's leadership. This access gave the Cali bosses insights into DEA activities, diplomatic communications, and international cooperation efforts. The cartel was often several steps ahead of those trying to take them down because it was plugged into the very institutions meant to stop them. Internationally, the cartel's reach extended into the world of banking and finance. They laundered billions of dollars through banks in Panama, the Caribbean, and even the United States. Many of these institutions either turned a blind eye or were actively complicit, receiving large deposits with little scrutiny. The cartel used shell companies, real estate investments, fake invoices, and offshore accounts to make dirty money appear clean, supporting a global network of corruption that shielded their empire from scrutiny. The genius of the Cali Cartel's infiltration strategy was that it blurred the lines between the state and the underworld. In many parts of Colombia, it became difficult to tell where legitimate power ended and cartel control began. The institutions designed to protect the public and uphold justice had, in many cases, become silent partners in one of the largest drug empires the world had ever seen. While the Cali Cartel was deeply rooted in Colombia, its reach extended far beyond national borders. By the mid-1990s, it had transformed into a transnational criminal enterprise, building a sophisticated global network that connected drug producers, traffickers, smugglers, money launderers, and corrupt officials across multiple continents. Unlike local crime syndicates, the Cali Cartel understood that to dominate the cocaine trade, it had to operate like a multinational corporation with international partners, diversified routes, and strategic alliances. At the core of this global expansion was Pacho Herrera, the cartel's key diplomat and international liaison. Herrera built and maintained relationships with powerful Mexican cartels, especially the Juarez and Tijuana cartels, to help distribute cocaine north into the United States. These Mexican partners became crucial middlemen, moving product across the U.S.-Mexico border and ensuring that the Cali Cartel maintained a dominant market share in American cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, and New York. These partnerships were not built on fear, but on mutual profit and shared risk, an arrangement that offered stability and long-term cooperation. But North America was only one piece of the puzzle. The Cali Cartel also aggressively expanded into Europe, where demand for cocaine was growing rapidly during the 1980s and 1990s. Spain served as a key entry point due to linguistic and cultural ties, as well as relatively lenient drug enforcement at the time. From there, Cali cocaine flowed into France, the Netherlands, Germany, and the United Kingdom. The cartel forged deals with European traffickers, Balkan crime syndicates, and even members of the Italian mafia, building an intricate web of alliances that allowed them to move product efficiently across borders. To support these operations, the Cali Cartel invested heavily in transportation and logistics infrastructure. They operated fleets of cargo ships, commercial front companies, and even clandestine airstrips in Central America and the Caribbean. They established safe houses, warehouses, and money laundering hubs in countries as far away as Brazil, Argentina, Panama, Venezuela, and even parts of West Africa, which later became an important transit zone for cocaine destined for Europe. Perhaps even more impressively, the cartel didn't just rely on criminal partnerships. They co-opted legitimate businesses in foreign countries to mask their activities. Import-export companies, textile firms, travel agencies, and real estate holdings were all used to hide illicit cash, move people and goods, and provide cover for meetings and operations. These businesses made it nearly impossible for law enforcement to draw a clear line between criminal and lawful activity, which in turn helped shield the cartel's international dealings from exposure. The Cali Cartel's global network also included a vast network of money couriers and bankers, fluent in the language of offshore accounts, wire transfers, and international finance. This allowed them to move and launder billions of dollars across multiple jurisdictions, avoiding detection and preserving their financial power in ways that few criminal groups had ever managed before. This expansive and well-organized global network was a major reason why the Cali Cartel not only survived the fall of Escobar, but also thrived in the shadows of the post-Medellín era. Their ability to create and manage such a widespread system of influence and cooperation gave them an unmatched edge in the world of drug trafficking. The immense wealth generated by the Cali Cartel from the global cocaine trade required sophisticated and innovative methods to transform billions of illicit dollars into seemingly legitimate assets. Money laundering was not just a side operation for the cartel. It was an essential component of their empire, carefully crafted and managed by expert financial operatives who understood the intricacies of global finance better than many legitimate businessmen. The cartel's leaders invested heavily in diversifying their money laundering techniques, creating a complex web that spanned multiple countries, industries, and financial systems. They utilized shell companies, offshore banks, and fake import-export businesses to funnel dirty money through seemingly lawful channels. Panama, the Bahamas, Switzerland, and various Caribbean nations became hubs for these operations, offering secrecy, lax regulations, and financial instruments that helped hide the origins of their vast fortunes. One of their most effective strategies involved the use of real estate investments. By purchasing luxury properties, hotels, ranches, and commercial buildings, both in Colombia and abroad, the cartel converted cash into physical assets that appreciated in value while providing a legitimate source of income. These properties often served dual purposes as operational bases, safe houses, and meeting points for cartel leaders and their international contacts. In addition to real estate, the Cali Cartel laundered money through legitimate businesses such as casinos, restaurants, import-export firms, and even pharmaceutical companies. These enterprises not only masked the flow of illicit funds, but also gave the cartel a foothold in legitimate economies, providing cover and influence in various sectors. For instance, the cartel's investments in Colombian and international banking institutions helped them gain inside information and sometimes direct influence over financial transactions, complicating efforts by law enforcement to trace their activities. Another significant aspect of their financial strategy was the use of hawala networks and money couriers, who physically transported cash across borders or used informal transfer systems that left no paper trail. These couriers operated with extreme caution and efficiency, moving millions in small increments to avoid suspicion and seizure by authorities. The sheer scale of their financial operations allowed the Cali Cartel to maintain a war chest that funded not only their drug trafficking activities, but also corruption, legal defenses, and intelligence operations. They could afford to bribe officials at all levels, finance paramilitary groups, and protect their leaders with highly trained security forces. Financial power also translated into political influence, allowing the cartel to sway elections, pressure politicians, and manipulate public policy to their advantage. Their ability to flood the market with capital made them an economic force that few could openly challenge. Ultimately, the Cali Cartel's mastery of money laundering was a key factor in their durability and resilience. It insulated them from many law enforcement efforts and allowed their criminal empire to operate with the appearance of legitimacy, making the task of dismantling their organization infinitely more difficult. Beneath the Cali Cartel's polished public image and corporate-style operations lay a core of ruthless enforcement and strict internal discipline that ensured the cartel's longevity and control. The leadership understood that while bribery, surveillance, and alliances were crucial, maintaining absolute obedience and eliminating threats from within was equally important to preserve their power. This duality, an outward appearance of business sophistication paired with brutal enforcement, defined the cartel's internal culture. The cartel employed a well-trained and heavily armed private militia, often referred to as sicarios, whose sole responsibility was to enforce the cartel's rules and protect its interests. These hitmen were feared for their efficiency and brutality. They eliminated rivals, punished informants, and dealt swiftly with any hint of disloyalty. The cartel's discipline was uncompromising. Betrayal or failure was met with severe consequences, often death. Unlike other drug cartels that displayed reckless violence, the Cali Cartel preferred calculated intimidation. Public acts of violence were minimized in favor of targeted hits designed to send clear messages without attracting excessive law enforcement attention. However, the internal crackdown on suspected traitors or incompetent operatives was merciless. Rumors of executions and disappearances spread fear, ensuring that members remained loyal and cautious. The leadership also imposed strict codes of conduct among their ranks. Loyalty was paramount. Members were expected to prioritize the cartel's interests above all else, including family and personal safety. The cartel's internal security apparatus monitored communications and behavior closely. Surveillance within their own ranks was commonplace, with spies embedded in various layers to catch potential conspirators. In addition to violence, the cartel used psychological tactics to maintain discipline. They fostered an environment of mutual suspicion and paranoia, where trust was limited and loyalty was continuously tested. This prevented factions from forming within the organization and discouraged conspiracies against the leadership. The Cali Cartel's enforcement methods extended to business operations as well. Suppliers, smugglers, and distributors who failed to meet quotas or betrayed the cartel's interests were swiftly dealt with. This strict control helped maintain the quality and flow of cocaine, ensuring that the cartel's reputation for reliability remained intact among international partners. Moreover, the cartel's ability to neutralize threats quickly allowed it to operate with a degree of impunity rarely seen in the drug trade. Potential whistleblowers, defectors, or enemies were often silenced before they could cause harm. This created a formidable internal order that discouraged dissent and rebellion. This combination of ruthless enforcement and tight internal discipline was one of the key reasons the Cali Cartel could sustain such a vast and complex empire for so many years, balancing the outward image of a legitimate enterprise with the brutal reality of organized crime. Despite its enormous power and careful planning, the Cali Cartel's empire was not invincible. The cartel's fall was a complex and drawn-out process that exposed both the limits of its influence and the relentless pressure exerted by international law enforcement agencies. Unlike the dramatic and violent downfall of Pablo Escobar and the Medellín cartel, the dismantling of the Cali cartel was characterized by a more calculated and patient approach by authorities, reflecting the cartel's more discreet methods. The collapse began in the early 1990s as Colombian and U.S. agencies intensified their efforts to root out drug traffickers. The DEA, working closely with Colombian intelligence and law enforcement, launched a series of covert operations targeting the cartel's financial networks, communication channels, and leadership. These operations involved infiltration, wiretapping, and the use of informants within the cartel's ranks. The leadership's overconfidence in their surveillance and bribery networks ironically became one of their vulnerabilities. Many officials and low-level operatives, fearing prosecution or seeking to save themselves, began cooperating with authorities. This influx of information allowed law enforcement to map the cartel's organizational structure, identify key figures, and disrupt their operations. The first major blow came in 1995 when Gilberto Rodriguez Orihuela, one of the cartel's top bosses, was captured. This arrest sent shockwaves through the organization and marked the beginning of the cartel's unraveling. Within the next few years, other leaders, including Gilberto's brother Miguel Rodriguez Orihuela and close associates like Pacho Herrera, were also apprehended or surrendered. The fall of the Cali cartel had significant ripple effects across Colombia and the international drug trade. The cartel's dismantling created a power vacuum that rival groups scrambled to fill. Some former Cali operatives moved to other organizations, while new cartels emerged to claim territory and control trafficking routes. The overall structure of drug trafficking in Colombia shifted dramatically with the rise of smaller, more fragmented groups. Beyond its immediate collapse, the Cali cartel's legacy is complex and enduring. It demonstrated that drug cartels could operate not just through violence, but through corporate-style sophistication, extensive corruption, and international business networks. Its methods influenced subsequent criminal organizations, which adopted similar tactics of infiltration, financial laundering, and global alliances. Moreover, the Cali cartel's story exposed the challenges faced by law enforcement and governments in combating organized crime that operates like a shadow government, blurring the lines between legality and criminality. It also highlighted the limits of militarized responses to drug trafficking, emphasizing the need for comprehensive strategies addressing corruption, financial systems, and international cooperation. The cartel's downfall also left behind a cautionary tale about the devastating social and political consequences of unchecked drug trafficking and corruption. Entire communities were destabilized, public institutions undermined, and millions of lives impacted by the violence and addiction fueled by the cartel's products. In the end, the story of the Cali cartel is a powerful reminder that the war on drugs is not just a battle fought on the streets or in the jungles. It is a fight against complex networks of corruption, power, and greed that can infiltrate even the highest levels of society. The cartel's rise and fall show how criminal empires can adapt, evolve, and exploit the very systems meant to stop them. Though the Cali cartel has been dismantled, its legacy lives on in the ongoing struggles faced by countries around the world dealing with drug trafficking and organized crime. Understanding their story is crucial, not only to remember a dark chapter in history, but to learn valuable lessons about the importance of vigilance, justice, and international cooperation in the fight against such threats. Only by confronting these challenges head-on, with transparency and resolve, can societies hope to prevent the rise of another empire like the Cali cartel and build a safer, more just future for generations to come.